Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're checking out the Protech Godson, and this of course is in that Desert Warrior finish that BladeHQ does, and doing this one specifically today because if you're watching this the day the video is going live, which is September 21st, BladeHQ is dropping a new variation of this at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and the new variation is identical to this one in every way except for that button. So I got this one at Blade Show Atlanta, had the red G10 inlay. I don't know if that was a Blade Show exclusive or just the one that they were doing at the time, but in any event, the one that's dropping today has a purple G10 inlay, and honestly I think that looks a little bit better than this red one that I have. It just kind of blends with the two main colors, which we have the pink on the handles and the blue on the blade and pocket clip. I think the purple just kind of matches them better. The red stands out a little bit. We do have purple and red sprinkles, but it really just draws your eye to the button. Now, on the other hand, there's a really childish portion of me that loves a red button. I see a red button, I feel like it's telling you you're not allowed to press it, and so snapping this open is all the more satisfying, even though it's has that really satisfying Protech kick, so it would be satisfying either way. Just knowing or seeing it and thinking like, oh, you're not supposed to press this, makes it feel a little bit more satisfying to me. But again, I have the mind of a child, so that's not going to be for everyone. But we'll talk about this Desert Warrior finish a little bit later in the video, but these are going to be $300 with that purple G10 inlay, which feels pretty reasonable to me, to be honest. I don't know what a aluminum scaled 154 cm Protech Godson runs for, but I would imagine it's within $15 of either direction of that, and so it doesn't feel like they're really gouging you for that Desert Warrior finish. It's a cool limited edition at a similar price point of what you're going to pay for a Protech Godson, and so that seems all pretty reasonable to me. And then as far as the knife goes, we're going to start there because this is still a Protech Godson. Already alluded to, that kick has the Protech kick that is so consistent. Every out the side auto I have from Protech feels almost identical. The Runt feels like a little bit of a larger kick, but it's because you don't have as much of it in your hand, so it's kind of out of control almost. You obviously can control it, but it feels like you have less control because you have less fingers on it. But for the most part, you get a very consistent kick with Protech, and this feels exactly the same as all of my other models. And so Protech is also a USA-made company, which is cool. I feel like they have pretty reasonable prices for a USA-made company, especially for one that's doing autos. You know, the auto mechanism tends to just add to the price of a knife. And so for the price point that you can get the entry-level Protechs at, I think they're pretty reasonable. Now, they do get pretty wild. They have some insane customs that are also insanely beautiful, but insanely expensive. And so they do a little bit of everything, but I feel like they have a nice entry-level USA made price point. And so the knife itself is kind of in the Goldilocks zone in terms of size for me for EDC, 7.56 inches overall. We're looking at 4.41 inches on the handle, and so that gives me plenty of space for a 4-finger grip, but also is incredibly ergonomic, more so than I would think. You know, usually I see really straight lines, and ergonomics isn't the first thing that comes to mind in that case, but this one swells up nicely up towards the blade, and so it keeps you kind of locked behind that blade. You feel like you're not going to slide up. There's a nice flat spot here, no jimping, but for your thumb to land, and so you lock in really well. Feels extremely well balanced, and no hot spots. Now, another area where you might expect a hot spot is this really oversized pocket clip. I think it's a little bit of an eyesore how large it is, but it works well and it doesn't create a hot spot. It's really well done. One of the spots you get a hot spot a lot on pocket clips is right here where it kicks up, so you can slide that over the material to get it in your pocket. But this one's a little bit lower than the rest of the pocket clip and also parallel with the handle, and so it doesn't stick out at all, so you really don't feel that whatsoever. And then the entire thing is just well centered. It's not deep carry, but that does put it more into that kind of behind the knuckle zone of your hand, and so it really disappears in your hand in that grip, and so really like that about it. We have a 3.15 inch spear point blade on there, really generous sharpening choil. That spear point blade is only sharpened on one side, which is something you're going to want on this knife because part of that blade is exposed out of the handle. Now, if you really wanted to, you can add a second edge to the first inch or so of that without really affecting that because it's tucked into the handle. I don't know that I'd really want to on an out the side auto, but if you really wanted to, you probably could do that. Now, weight-wise, we're looking at 2.97 ounces. Feels really lightweight in hand and is also really well balanced. It just feels right like you're gripping in the right spot. So I like that a lot about it. Now, right hand tip up only, which is always a little bit disappointing for autos because it's such an ambidextrous deployment and locking method. And so would be nice if that were reversible, but it's not. And so it is what it is. But otherwise, really, really great ambidextrous knife. You can do this left-handed, right-handed. I'm right-handed, so it doesn't make a huge difference to me, but I always do like to see ones that would work well as an ambidextrous knife to actually be ambidextrous. Now, T8 body screws all the way around. We do have T6 on the pocket clip, which I'm fine with, but all of the body screws are T8, and also all on one side. So that show side is really nice and clean, which makes the decision to have the pivot be tooled on the show side rather than the opposite side really bizarre. It would have made a lot more sense. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that. If you do know why, let me know in the comments. I don't think it's accidental though, because all of the pictures I've seen of other people's and the BladeHQ, they are all like that. And so it definitely seems like it's intentional, but it seems bizarre when there's no other hardware on this side to have the tooling on that side. But otherwise, billboarding, obviously have the Desert Warrior billboarding, but the Protech is very minimal. You have Protech USA right on the show side, and then on the opposite side we just have that 154 cm. Kind of a weird placement for me, not my favorite. Definitely would prefer it tucked up there, but doesn't bother me too much. So 154 cm obviously has this coating as well, which we'll compare actually to one of the previous ones in just a moment. And so I think the coating does really well. You can see this is a little bit dirty, but it should clean off. Every time it's gotten dirty, it's cleaned off. I haven't lost any of the coating. Now it should be noted that automatics are illegal where I live, and so it doesn't get the pocket time of some of my other knives, but I definitely use this one still. I enjoy fidgeting with it and opening boxes and breaking down boxes even with it, and so that coating seems to hold up pretty well. Now, let's get it next to the Civivi Elementum, the only other Desert Warrior knife in my collection. I have the Victorinox, but those aren't coated. That's just plastic scales that have sprinkles on them. And so this is the only other Desert Warrior version that I have. And we'll get close up first to the handle. Now, the pink on the Protech is significantly better than the pink on the Civivi. The Civivi has almost like a printed look where it's a little bit grainy. Hopefully that's picking up on camera. I'm not sure if it is. And same thing with the sprinkles. So we're getting a little bit better quality, but it's close enough. I think the Protech is better, but you're spending a lot more on the Protech. Now, when we get to the blade, I don't think it's particularly close. So hopefully this picks up on camera, but on the Protech, it's a little bit of a lighter blue, but it's also kind of a matte look to it, and it's super smooth. On the Civivi, and I'll try and get even closer, so hopefully that picks up, it has the look of like someone spray painted the car type look. It looks a little bit cheap to me. It's like, looks kind of thick, and it's like glossy, but also a little bit bubbly, not significantly so. There's no like bubbles that I could scratch off and get back to the paint, but it just doesn't look as good to me. So it looks like when you get like a cheap black coated blade, the DLC coated blade, stuff like that, where it's not well done, and so it looks kind of similar to me on the Civivi. So you definitely get what you pay for in terms of the coating, and it's possible that that has nothing to do with the price, although I would imagine it has something to do with the price. But this one came out a lot later than the Elementum, so it may be that they just perfected their processes. If they did another run of the Elementum, that they would have the same finishings, but I doubt it. I think we're probably paying for a little bit of that better finishing. Now, one area where the Elementum does outshine it though is the hardware. So if we look at that pivot, we have that purple Civivi, and if we look at the pivot on the Godson, we just have a regular silver tooled pivot, same with the button on the outside of that G10 inlet. And most importantly, going to the hardware, we have a different color screw for every screw on the Elementum, and for the Protech, they're all exactly the same. And so not a big deal. In fact, I didn't really even think about it until I looked at them side by side. But for as much more as we're paying for the Godson, it would have been nice to get the same kind of treatment with the hardware, because I do think that's a nice touch. Doesn't make or break it at all, but it really ties everything together. This one also has that brown liner, that kind of like a normal donut color, same with the backspacers, but we don't have backspacers or liners on the Godson, so I'm not faulting that one for missing on those details, but we do have hardware on both of them, so why not get the same treatment on the hardware. But otherwise, I think this one's far in a way better than the Elementum. In fact, I don't really carry the Elementum. That one was more of a novelty knife. This one I knew if I'm paying $300 for it, it can't be a novelty knife. It has to be a knife I'm actually going to use, occasionally carry, even though it's illegal where I live. I'm pretty selective when I carry it, but it gets a ton of use around the house and stuff and has held up well. And so with that said, this is probably going to be the last Desert Warrior knife I ever buy, and not because it's a bad knife, in fact the exact opposite. So I am someone who likes the Desert Warrior pattern. I know not everyone does, but there's a few things I like about it. First and foremost is, and maybe more so with the Elementum than this one, but just because this is an auto, but you can show this to a non-knife person and it kind of knocks their guard down and it makes them a little bit more open-minded, I think, to knives, and they find it interesting and want to learn more about it. And so it's a nice way to get people who are casually like somewhat interested in knives into knives, and so nice kind of entry knife into that if they were more readily available. I guess that's another thing where they're not readily available, so it might discourage them, but at least initially, it kind of knocks their guard down. And then in terms of myself, I wouldn't consider myself a casual knife collector by any means. And so for me, it's just something fun and different. And I have so many, you know, OD green micarta handle knives or black G10 handle knives that seeing something just a little bit different was exciting to me. And I think it's losing a little bit of the excitement. And so if you don't have one already, I think that can still be there. It's not like I think it has to go away entirely. But for me, I feel like I got the best version of a Desert Warrior knife that I'm going to get. And I know the Microtech exists as well. For me, I'm more of a Protech fanboy than a Microtech fanboy, so this is kind of the peak for me. But if you're more into Microtech, I understand that one being even more high-end than this one and you wanting that one. But either way, whichever one it is, I feel like that's the peak of what we can get out of Desert Warrior. I'm not ever going to buy a Desert Warrior Sabenza or Arius or Oz. And so for me, this is really as high as we're going to go, so I don't know that I'm really interested in seeing other Desert Warrior knives. And that doesn't mean I'm swearing off Desert Warrior pattern altogether. I know Olight just did their sale and they have the O-Pen Glow as well as the Otical utility knife in Desert Warrior. I didn't pick either of those up, but not necessarily not going to pick up future releases. For example, if they did the O-Pen Mini in Desert Warrior, I'd probably end up grabbing that. And so at least as far as knives go, I feel like I'm not going to get anything better than this knife in the Desert Warrior pattern, and so probably going to be the last one I try out. Now, I do like that they did the reverse colorway on some of the recent releases with the blue as the main color and then the pink blade, but it's not enough of a difference for me, I think, to really kind of venture into that. If there's a really cool one that comes out, I may or may not grab it, but most likely not. I'd really like to see whatever the next trend is, and like I said, I don't think this one should necessarily go away. If there's still people that haven't been able to get in on the drops and want them, by all means, I think they should be able to get them and they should continue to release them. But for me, at least, I think this has kind of killed the hype on this pattern on knives for me. So let me know what your thoughts on that are in the comments below, or if you just don't like the Desert Warrior pattern in general, that's fine too. For me, I like it. I don't have anything against people who don't, and same thing with like patterns that I don't like. I'd obviously buy what you like, get what you like, use it, don't use it, do whatever you want with it. For me, I don't care what other people do. I'm really only about my collection. I'm sharing my collection with you and what I like to pick up, but do whatever makes you happy in the knife collection world. But would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below, whether or not you plan on picking one up in today's drop if you're watching this when it goes live, and anything else you'd like to talk about. But thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you did enjoy this video, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.